said, hello, my name is Julia Prickett. I'm a senior here at Purdue studying mass media communications and meteorology in the Brian Lamb School of Communication. And it's such an honor to be here today alongside Purdue Convos. So thank you guys so much and your team for putting on this wonderful event. And thank you all for being here today on your Sunday with this really nice weather. You're welcome. Just kidding. So today we have a very special guest. This is Miss Judy Hawkins, and I've had the pleasure to speak with you on multiple occasions. So it's really exciting to be with an audience here today to really hear about Judy's wonderful story. And she has such an inspiring story to share as she was on a plane during the 9/11 attacks in New York City. And alongside with her story, this just extends from her personal experience as thousands of other passengers have had a similar experience. And this propelled the inspiration for the musical Come From Away that will be here at Purdue on April 3rd, hosted by Purdue Convos. So if you don't have your tickets already, make sure to get them. So again, I want to welcome Miss Judy Hawkins here today as we get to hear more about your story, and I have the pleasure to, host this event. So without further ado, please welcome Judy Hawkins. So thank you again so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure. So we'll start something really easy. So aside from your inspiring story, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. Tell me a little bit about yourself, being from Tippecanoe County.
Yes, hello, I'm Judy. And yes, I'm from Dayton, Indiana, and graduated from high school in Dayton. And then beyond that, got into motorsports, which was always a part of my life, fortunately. And then I actually got paid to do it. So I freelanced, so I worked for all the networks. I did NASCAR. If it's got an engine on it, I've probably been there covering it at some point. So yeah, so that was sort of what took me to Detroit to meet my husband that was in Formula One. And that meant his family was all in England. So we were actually in England when all of this adventure started. We were on our way home because, well, of course, I had a race to do in Dallas. So it was part of the reason we were on our way home. So
yeah. So let's start beforehand. So put yourself in the mindset before stepping foot on that plane. So who were you with? Where were you going?
My husband was with me, and it was one of those things. There was a testing going on for Formula One. So as we were sitting at the coffee shop at Heathrow, the teams kept walking by. Oh, look, there's Colin. So we'd stop and have a little visit, and and then finally we got on our airplane about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we sat in our two seats. It was a 777, 2, 6, 2 more, and we thought everything was fine in the world, but we found out about 5 hours later that it wasn't. So
walk me and the audience through that crucial moment, you hearing about 9/11.
Well, the 777s have a little camera that you can see what's going on, and you can track your plane, Oops, sorry. And both of us had that connected, and he had also, the captain, Michael Ballard, had told us that we would be ascending when we got close to Canada because we were going into Chicago. So I was sort of dozing a little bit, and it was like I could feel the airplane change because flying so much. And I looked at Colin and I said, "Aren't we supposed to be going down? We're going up, aren't we?" And he said, "Yep, we're going up." And I said, "Okay." So a few more seconds go by, and we get this announcement saying that our aircraft is fine. There's nothing wrong with the plane. But we are being diverted because there's been a catastrophic event in New York City, and the airspace above the United States is being closed. So we are being diverted to Newfoundland. And it was like, okay then. And as soon as he said, the other part is, because we're being diverted, we're heavy. We have to dump fuel. And it's like, well, that wasn't anything I thought I'd ever hear. But then, in that split second, the fuel's coming out of the wing. It's like, well, hello, okay. So a little more time goes by, and he said, we're approaching Gander, and we will be, as soon as we are situated, I will connect the headsets to the Canadian broadcasting, so you will know what's going on. You will know as much as I know. And you will know whatever I find out. So, sure enough, they approach, and we looked out the window, and it's like half of the town was there standing at the fence watching all of these aircraft coming in. And it's like, and of course, we were seeing ahead of us when we were stacked up, all the planes in front of us. And it was like, man, this place is gonna be full. And it's like, yep, 38 of us landed, and we landed at about a middle of the pack. We were also a United flight, which of course, for people that recall, there were 2 United planes and 2 American planes that were involved in the 9/11 attacks. And so we ended up fairly close to the airport itself, but all of the other aircraft were all just sort of scattered, or well, they weren't really scattered, they were stacked all around. So, and all heavies, so they were all 777s or 747s, they were all heavy planes. So they were all big. And I actually did a little math, which I remember from high school, that there were 38 aircraft and there were 6,000, almost 700 of us. So that averaged out to about 178 people a plane. So, but then, of course, what are they gonna do with us? We're sitting there thinking, Oh, and the other blessing was that our captain, as we were sitting and he got us parked, he said, I can tell you, I've already been in touch with facilities, so everything will be okay. Because it's like, well, we're sitting on an airplane. I wonder how long we're going to be sitting there. I'm sure glad I don't have to worry about going to the loo. So that was one little, positive of the day. And we'd had one meal on already, and there was a snack to come. And then it was the Quaker cereal bars was then the next part that we get, because we didn't get off of the aircraft until 1 o'clock on Wednesday.
Wow.
We sat on the tarmac for 19 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have to ask.
Yeah.
So you're going to be there for a while. You're sitting in this aircraft for 19 hours. Did you think, maybe we should make some friends?
Well, we did actually sort of visit with some people around us, and fortunately, we were very fortunate by it being the time of year it was. We had only one family that had 5 children, and we had another family that had about a 12-year-old and an 18-month-old, and that was the only children on the plane out of 197 people. So we were very fortunate, and the children, the family with the 5 children, were on their way to Houston to have their orientation to be on the Ship of Hope. It was their basically their religious sabbatical for a year. And so that's what they were doing on the plane. And the other family, I'm not really sure, they were just going home. So, yeah. So it was, yeah, we gathered up a few people in that process.
Yeah. So you touched down in Gander.
So we touched down in Gander.
Now what?
Oh, look, there's a picture. Yeah, there's a lot of people. And of course, this airport was used in the earlier years of it because of the airplanes going on to Europe would need to refuel. So that was basically all it was really doing. A lot of people really didn't get out there or change planes, they just refueled. So customs people, there weren't a lot of them. So we had 6,700 plus people has to go through customs. We were in Canada. So it was a while before they could figure out how to sort of process us, and it just took that long to get everything in place. So, and we found out later, the people that are at our Salvation Army, where we ended up, they already knew about us, and they had already started gathering pillows and blankets and things, and food. They were ready for us Tuesday night. It was like, if we could have only been here, we'd have been very pleased. but we just kind of waited our time.
Sure. And
the captain and the flight attendants, sort of made rounds every so often and just sort of checked in and that. So,
Yeah. So back in Gander, so you said you were in the Salvation Army, correct?
Yes. Also the trick was they had all these people, and the school bus drivers were on strike. So, consequently, it took a little while to really figure out what they were going to do with us. And the town of Gander, the hotels and the motels, basically were reserved for the flight crews, because the flight crews for all of the planes were also their own ground crew, because there were no ground crews. to check on the plane. And of course, the planes are not really meant to sit around for a period of time. So they must be monitored and checked and double checked. So the flight crew had to be close to the airport. Well, of course, we end up, by the time that we got off on Wednesday, we were a 30-minute school bus ride to our little fishing village, Gambo, that had one stoplight. Yeah. And one little drugstore, and a beautiful Salvation Army. So it was a fairly new building, and as it happens, I'm allergic to smoke, so it was one of those things, sitting on the plane thinking about where we might end up and how sick I was going to be. But of course, it was a non-smoking church. Imagine that. It was great. They had a beautiful community hall, and the sanctuary part had all the pews and everything, and it was like, that's where we were going to stay. Well, of course, as you might know, my body's really not built for a church pew for sleeping. And Colin didn't even try it. He just made his little pallet on the floor. So I just fidgeted all night. So, but then the next day, they showed up with the army cots that were this far off of the floor. If you can remember the MASH series and how they carried him around on those little, they thought that was a cot. We didn't really think it was much of a cot, but okay. So we set our cots up in the community hall at night, and then we would, take our little blankies and everything, and put them away and set them up on the stage, actually. So we had cots the second night, but, we didn't leave until Sunday. So we had, a while to sleep on the cots, which was okay.
Yeah, so you were there for 6 days.
Yeah.
So,
and we had a heat wave. That was the other thing.
Gosh.
Yes, that was the other thing that was a blessing. It was like, it's Newfoundland, and it's September, and it's 65 degrees and 70 degrees. It's like, thank you, because all of the luggage had to stay in the hold. Nobody could take anything out. You only had what you got off the plane with. And so, no coats. So it was thinking, oh man, it's going to be cold, but it wasn't. We predicted that it was going to be lovely for the whole time that we were there, and sure enough, it was. It was amazing.
Yeah, a blessing in disguise.
Yes, you never know where you're going to find that little silver lining. Yeah, swear to God you don't.
So can you talk to me about the people in Gander? With going on in New York City and most of them not being U.S. citizens, how did they react to everything?
They were very serious about what they were doing and making sure that we were taken care of. That part of it really took a back seat because, of course, we had still not seen anything until we got, there you go, until we had gotten to the church. And of course, they didn't actually have cable because the television that they used, they just used it for videotapes, for the kids. It was like, okay, well, somebody figure out the cable. All right. Well, next door, there was this nice little store that had a little apartment above it and had little stairs coming down behind it, So the cable guy shows up, goes up the steps, connects with the guy's cable in this little apartment, brings him back down, brings it across the parking lot and in the window of the sanctuary part. It was like, okay, we got television now. So, but of course, it was astonishing because we had heard it, but we had no visual. And of course, by the time that all of that happened and we were on the tarmac and he did connect us, this was well into 6 hours after everything had happened in New York. Of course, by that time, all of you were hearing reruns of everything, and we were pretty much getting the same rerun. So we had not known the very beginning until we saw it. And Colin and I watched it about 2 times through and just kind of looked at each other and said, well, we can't do anything about this. What are we going to do? Right. It's just us here now. And so I guess we'll just wait and see. Sure. But there were people that stayed and sat and just watched it over and over again. Yeah.
Can you walk me through those emotions that you felt when you saw that happen? You were in the air a couple hours before then, Can you walk me through those emotions?
Yes. It was devastating, and as I say, we heard some of it. Right. And as some of you and most of you may have seen, when the Hindenburg was going down and the announcer's voice and how stark it was and crushed as he was talking about it, that's the way it looked to us. Right. Yeah. when we were able to see it.
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, inspiring story. And you know, myself, I was born in 2002, so I wasn't alive for 9/11.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, why do you think people are so captivated by like stories like yours and many other passengers?
I think it's the fact that it's terrible to say, but we were the blessing of the day. We were the only good part that came out of that day.
Right.
And part of what is astonishing is the fact that it was just a little town on an island, and they did everything they could possibly do to take care of us. I mean, they really stepped up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and continued to do so through the whole time. Even to the point that we got the call that we were going to be leaving, and our little school bus came to get us, and we were outside the church, and everybody was saying goodbye to the people that had been volunteering, you know, and they all came. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And they still all came just to be able to wave their bus goodbye, you know, so yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, as I say, we were the little blessing of the day.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there one memory or moment from Gander that sticks out to you that could really summarize your entire experience throughout this?
Well, I can tell you the first person that I saw as we got off the plane, again, they had to find all these custom people to take care of us, right? And of course, the military was out. So there's this soldier standing there in full camo stuff, being really stern. And at that point in time, I worked part-time for Tony Stewart's merchandise office in Indianapolis. And I had a Tony Stewart fleece on. And this guy looks over at me, he says, "Oh, Tony Stewart, great guy." And then back to his gun. You know, it's like, I could maybe tell he might have been a weekend guy, but, you know, but it was great. You know, we have to be proper here. Okay, all right. So, yeah. So then went through our, customs, and then we get through to the airport part, and there's food all along this little canal that we were going through, headed to our bus, and they had actually, there was a huge map on the wall that said, "You are here," and there's a payphone right next to that, but it had an out of order sign on it because everybody kept stopping and trying to use the phone. They weren't getting on the buses, they had to keep us moving. So they just put an out of order sign on it. Yeah. We just grabbed a couple of things, a little pizza, and we got on our school bus. Yeah.
So that was 6 days,
Yeah.
and then you flew back into where?
We flew back into Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah. So we really did get home, so to say. We were supposed to get on another plane to go to Indianapolis, but one of the people that we had met on the plane, her husband, the reason she was on the plane is because he worked for Rolls-Royce, and they had gone to England to find housing for the family because he was going to be transferred there for a couple of years. Wow. So he stayed for his work, and she was on the plane with us. And unbelievably enough, on that flight also was another person that worked for Rolls-Royce. And Kathy knew her name, but had not ever met her. So they met, and the two of them, efficient as they were, had our passenger list and checked us all off as we were getting on our little bus to make sure that, corralled us all, So, yeah. So Kathy's husband, he flew home on Saturday, and his parents had been taking care of their two children through all of this, thinking that it was going to be a week, and it ended up being 2 weeks,
Right.
So he actually drove to Chicago to pick us up.
Aww.
Because his parents had driven to Chicago to pick him up the day before.
Yeah.
So it was really great to not have to get on another airplane. But it was really strange because I actually, fortunately, had a lengthy conversation with our co-pilot, Terrence Hartsfield, and I have stayed in touch through the years, and Captain Mike has retired. And I talked to him on Thursday, and he said, "Just think, you got to go home in a van and only an hour or 2 hour drive." And he said, "I had to get on a plane and go to Seattle."
Wow.
So he still had another flight yet after he landed.
Sure.
Yeah. And as we came in, we were the last United flight to return from the diverted planes. Mm-hmm. And they had all of the luggage tugs all lined up with flags.
So you're back on American soil.
Yep.
Talk about that. That moment, the airport.
Oh, well,
feelings
just
for-
having all the tugs to greet us was just amazing. And Captain Mike came on to say that we were also, customs had been cleared for us, and that we would just be able to walk right in and do our customs thing and then be on our way. So they tried to expedite us and get us through as quickly as they could, since they knew that we'd been gone for 6 days. Yeah.
Yeah, such an inspiring story. I mean, you know, for me hearing it too from you, and this is my third time us talking about it, which it never gets old. It's amazing. Yeah, no, and you know, you said you worked for Tony Stewart, so let's switch gears.
Yeah, okay.
The musical, Come From Away.
Yes.
What was your reaction hearing that it was getting brought to Purdue in April, a month away?
It was exciting. We were actually in 2015, and of course, overachievers that were on the aircraft. We had a website before we ever got on the airplane. So it was UA 929 was our flight, and of course that's basically what the plane people all call each other by their flights. And we had a website before we even got on the airplane. So that lasted for about 5 years, and then it went into Facebook. So I happened to glance, because Colin and I were going to California, and there was a little blurb about it being at La Jolla for its premiere. So it was like, wait a minute, you're kidding. Okay, so we made sure that we got tickets, and probably we may have been early on as the first people to see it as the plane people.
Yeah.
But of course we were all, well, no, not to give anything away, but I'm here, so it's okay. But it's very touching.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think it really captures
Oh,
the
they did
story?
it. The couple that wrote it just did such a terrific job. They had written a play before that was on Broadway, and that's what I told Colin, that as we were walking across the parking lot when it was over, I said, this play is going to go to Broadway. It will. And he said, oh, okay. And I said, I'm going to go. Oh, okay. And I said, the other sad part is that Gander, that there's not going to be anyone maybe in Gander that will make those type of plans to see it on Broadway, Well, as it turned out, they did, because it was premiere, so it went to Seattle, which I called Terrence, he lives in Seattle, and he got to see it there.
Awesome.
So, and then it went across through Canada and actually did go to Gander.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh.
it did.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So be honest, how many times have you seen the musical?
15.
It's 16, about to be 16.
It's about to be 16, and of course, I did make it to Broadway. Oh, there I am. There's my thumbnails.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah.
American flag.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, current students here at Purdue, like myself, weren't alive for 9/11. I mean, my brother's a freshman here, and he was born in 2004.
Yeah.
So what do you hope that Purdue students will get out of seeing this musical here at Purdue on April 3rd?
I think that it will remind them of what has happened to the world, because it's still not stable, unfortunately. But one of the things that did happen is we came home, there was an American flag almost everywhere. And I hope we get back to that very soon. Yeah. So patriotism and paying it forward. That is one of the passengers, Kevin, I think you even have a picture of the books, that Kevin was on one of the other flights, not mine, but he started a foundation, and the year anniversary, he lived in New York, the business was in New York, and he gave his employees $100 each to go out that day and do a good deed with that. And from that on, that started his foundation, and that's what he does. And there were actually, I believe she was on a Continental flight that had been in charge of like Ohio State's foundation for recruiting in donations, and they put together a scholarship that is still going.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So.
And I want to go back. There was a slide there with your house.
Oh,
right?
yes. That's my little pay it forward, and we
amazing.
will never forget.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my little pay it forward.
Yeah. And it's such an inspiring story. So I want to thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And Purdue Convos for putting on this amazing event, and giving the audience an opportunity to hear her story. But now I want to open up the floor to the audience. If you guys have any questions you would like to ask Judy, this is now the time to do so. So if anyone does. Perfect. Even better. Thank you.
Could you explain the flag for
Oh, this is the Newfoundland flag. It's actually Labrador and Newfoundland, because Newfoundland's this little island, and it actually had its own designation, I guess. But then Canada decided that Labrador was like that far away from it, which is another story. And so they put the two flags together. So part of it is Newfoundland and part of it is Labrador. Yeah, and that goes with me to all the shows. The one that's in my window at home is the one that went to Broadway. So it got put in the window. This is the traveling one.
Thought I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
What kind of foods did you enjoy during your stay?
Well, I tell you what, the Salvation Army people were just wonderful. We had breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we had a little bit of everything from spaghetti to chili to various things. Their challenge was making sure of diet issues for everyone. And as we were eating every day, we put together that we were emptying their pantry, because Salvation Army, that's where people in the village would go to during the winter. So we passed the hat and came up with about $3,000, and so they'd be able to go shopping to fill up the pantry again. And we did it again then before we left. So they ended up with about $6,000 to go shopping to refill, to replenish their pantry. So, and we also realized we had two couples that we shared dinner with, and I had my watch set on Newfoundland time, which was an hour and a half different. Yeah. So we decided the only way to really know what was going on in the world and where we were, my watch was on the hour and a half where we were. Collins was on Indiana time, and one of the other couples were from Chicago, so they kept their watch on their Chicago time. So we had 3 time zones sitting at the table for dinner, but it was great. So we also realized that they were waiting on us like we were in a restaurant. It's like, wait a minute. We need to be clearing our own tables, at least, that's the least we can do. So we started clearing the tables, and then the next morning, I get into the kitchen to, get some eggs or to get some toast or something, and there's Colin. He's running 3 toasters. He's got toasters going, and there was 3 other passengers that were helping him in the kitchen, So we decided, they didn't need to treat us as we were guests. We were there, we could help, so we did, yeah, which was, an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, least we could do, for sure. So, yeah.
Oh, I see a hand back there in that back corner.
What type of things did they provide for entertainment for you while you were there?
Perfect question. We had our own singer-songwriter on the plane. Yeah, he was actually en route to go to Nashville to write for a week in collaboration with another writer in Nashville. And he wrote his own music, and his name is Julian Dawson. He's from England, and does travel still in Europe. But there, he would just sing all kinds of different things that people would know, that could either sing along with them or, and borrowed a guitar because his guitar was in the hole. So it was, and so that week, basically, we listened, and people in the village would come. They knew that Julian was going to be entertaining in the evening, so they would come. So we really filled the place up in the evening after dinner. Yeah, it was great. And later, we stayed in touch with Julian, and he played in Chicago several times, and we were able to see him in Chicago. But what was really bizarre is the first night that we actually saw him playing and singing his own songs, it was like it was different, And so when he finished or took a break, I said, Julian, because he did do one original the whole time. And I said, Julian, that's beautiful. I said, why didn't you do more of those? He said, no. Check the ego at the door. Yeah. So he's still playing and singing. Yeah. You can look him up. Yeah. So.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, was there a moment when it really hit you that it could have been us, the planes that
Yes.
crashed
Yes. Yeah. She's asking when the moment that, if I had a moment that we realized it could have been us. I will relate part of what I talked with the pilot, Terrence, about the fact that there were approaching 400 flights coming from Europe and elsewhere that would be funneled through Gander Airport, and 200 of them were, a little over 200 of them were turned back around and went back to England or wherever they had originated. And it was the idea that Terrence made the comment. He said, if Canada had not opened their arms to us, I don't know what we would have done. And it's like, there was 167 airplanes that were orphans. We had, at that split second, there was nowhere to go. And Canada said, we'll take you. So it was in that time frame and the time frame of the fuel coming out of the wing and then getting to the airport, realizing, of course at that point we didn't know that the two of the 4 planes were united. But we knew that the world would never be the same. And possibly it could have been us. It just so happened that we weren't, we were diverted, so we didn't, there was still a chance, just knowing, once we found out about the United situation, that did, and of course, no luggage out of the hole. And our poor, desolate luggage that before we got back on the plane to leave, here's all of these rows of luggage, and they were just waiting to see what didn't get picked up. So yeah, it was chilling at times. Yeah.
Tom?
So Judy, how did communications go on the ground? Did you know each day that you were going to be there only 24 more hours, or how long? At what point did you know how long you would be staying?
There was no real communication other than our flight crew came to see us every day and would report that they did not know yet when things would be open. So our flight crew came every day, and as I also found out, they actually had their rooms rented before they even got off the plane, because the first officer realized when everything was unfolding in front of them that they needed to have a place to stay. So he was able to go ahead and make the reservations for the flight crew's rooms before they were ever off of the plane. And then the next day they were able to rent a van so they would be able to come out to see us. Yeah, they checked in there with us every day. Yeah, and just saying, no, we don't know yet. But it was better than not seeing them. I mean, it was reassuring to see them every day. Yeah, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Back to the conversation just before this, was there suspicion among people and checking of baggage, by the officials, and checking of new people, things like that?
As we got off of the plane to go in through Gander,
Right, as you
through the airport,
Yeah.
well, all we had was what we had with us. So going through customs, we were very light. So there wasn't any searching or customs or anything like that. As we were leaving, we still had to go through it. We did go through it going out. Yeah. I guess they didn't think we were in too much trouble, but I don't know. But yeah, but they still did. They had started sort of the TSA thing before we left. Yeah. So when we got ready to leave, we had to go through a little procedure and before we got on the plane. But other than that, that was it. Yeah. Somehow they trusted us. I'm not sure why, but yeah.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you stayed in touch with other passengers.
Yes.
Did you or other passengers stay in touch with folks from Gander?
Oh yes, and I still have a family that we trade Christmas cards and things with in Gander. Well, in Gambo. Yeah, in Gambo. And when you do see the play, everybody, our Gambo comes up. Yeah. But yeah, we just, it doesn't seem like it could be 22 years, but yeah, it's been, as I say, I talked to Terrence and he's a captain now, and I have the one family that it still works and volunteers with the Salvation Army. And there's actually a couple of things on YouTube that is, one of them is a reference to Australia, the day, something about, it's like the tiny town that took everybody in, and it's really about, you actually can see the Salvation Army. It shows it, yeah. And it's about, they are covering, one of the couples, Ian and Julian, Ian and Julie, their son had been injured. He was a professional surfer, and he had been injured, and where he was in Indonesia, and they wanted to amputate his foot. So they were trying to get communication to not do that and figure out how to get him home. They lived in Australia. I forgot that part. They lived in Australia. So Teresa, that was part of the Salvation Army staff, she really worked with them to be able to get them in touch and everything. So that was the other thing. When we got to the church, they told us there were 2 phones, so that we could just queue up and not to worry about using calling cards or reverse, whatever, that the Canadian Red Cross was taking care of all the long distance calls. So again, Canada really, really did step up. And so they did, the foot was saved, everything was fine. So, yeah. But it's just little things like that we knew more about later. But I had actually stayed in touch with Julia. I got to see her, one of my races in California. I made arrangements to be able to see her, and I had a young lady that was in Dallas, and she and I were able to connect too. So she's now actually moved to Nebraska. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right here, yes, sir.
Have you had an opportunity to return?
I have not. It's one of those things that Kathy Weimer, the one that was, her husband works for Rolls-Royce, she and I have talked about it, and we've just not done it. But I can tell you, there were 3 guys, and one of them was affectionately called MG Jack. It was 3 guys, Jack, and Tom, and they had gone shopping in England for MG parts. So that was their luggage, was the MG parts. So they didn't have a lot of clothes with them. They wanted to save all their space to bring in their parts back. Parts back, so I'm sure that would have been an interesting luggage for them to find, was MG parts, But now, MG Jack, his company makes plaques. And he had a plaque made in memory of everything that happened, and he and his family actually went and donated it to the church, to the Gambo Salvation Army. So there have been some of us, and actually, this sounds terrible, it has actually become a tourist stop now because of Come From Away. They're actually, the touring group that's touring right now is actually going to be in Gander, I think for maybe 3 or 4 nights. They're actually going to be there part of a week, and there's actually hotels that are doing packages that you can come and stay, and it includes your ticket to the play. So it's like, man. Yeah, so yeah, it's changed the island quite a bit, and there'll be people that will go and they'll want a tour guide, and one of the people that maybe had been sort of a frontline person, they'll volunteer to be their guide while they're there, so yeah. And it was our thing, of course, at the Salvation Army was you had a shower list that you could sign up for to go to someone's house to take a shower. Oh yeah. And if that person happened to offer laundry service, you could have your laundry done at the same time you're doing your shower. So, but about the second day, we had a lovely person that had her son, John, that was about 7, and her little nephew that she babysat for. So they came and get us. So of course, there's a baby seat, and there's another child, and there's Colin and I. And the driver. So the car was pretty full, but we went to her brother's house, and we took showers. And the little store next door had done T-shirts for some festival or something that had been going on, and the guy actually still had the press for it. So he he got a whole bunch of t-shirts and made a whole bunch of t-shirts and sold them to us for $5. You know, it was like, so I still have that t-shirt, and I thought, no, I wouldn't do that. But it was great. And of course, as it happens, having people in and out of the homes, they had heard about Colin and I sort of, I'll back it up a little further. Our plane also had 3 sets of newlyweds. Oh. So they were very kind and found places for them to stay in private homes. We thought that was the best thing to do. Yeah, that was good plan. So, yeah. But of course, people talking about others, that, you know, what jobs they have and what they do and all that kind of stuff. Well, of course, they'd heard about Colin being Formula One, and they'd heard about me being a television person. So by the time that it got to us, Colin built stock cars for NASCAR. And it's like, oh, that's a good one. Okay. And that I did television, but they weren't sure of what kind. So it was like, you know, it's just sort of like those little game, you know, you pass it along, and it really changes by the time you get to the end of it, let me tell you. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Out of all the passengers, your group went to Gambo. What was the distribution like? Because that's a lot of passengers.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Well, that's the reason we were really happy that the bus drivers came off strike, because they would have really had a heck of a time trying to figure out what to do with all of us. So we actually all ended up in about 4 different towns, and Gambo was able to take 3 aircraft full, us, you know, the UA-929. It was in the Salvation Army. There was like a community group that opened up, like, I'm going to say like the Toastmasters or something like that, a service group like that, actually had a building, and they opened it up, and the other one was a school. So, yeah. So they managed to tuck away most of us, you know. And of course, the other thing was that as we were getting settled, there were people that had medications possibly in their luggage that they couldn't get to. So we had Nurse Eileen that would make the list. All you had to do was go to Eileen. Nurse Eileen would be able to make your list of the medications that you needed, and the little drugstore was one of these that it was just this little wooden building that had some little clothing and some little makeup and things like that in the front, and then there was the little pharmacist in the back. You know, it was like, oh my gosh. But he managed to, whatever he didn't have, he could connect with Gander and be able to get it by the next day. So no one went without their medication. Nurse Eileen did her job, and, you know, was able to connect with that, and then the pharmacist was able to connect with Gander. And there was also, they would do a van run once a day or twice a day to the Walmart that was in Gander. And so when you could tell who had been to Walmart, because this shirt matched that shirt over there really closely. You know, it was in a different size maybe, but, you know, it was the same plaid right over there. So, but Colin and I decided we just rough it. We just stayed the way we were. Added another t-shirt underneath what I had, you know, so, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Was there a variety of nationalities and ethnicities on your plane, and what did you experience in that?
Yeah, there was, we didn't have quite so much varied, but for the other aircraft, there were numerous ones. And again, if you see the play, it's just, oh, yeah, I got diverted there, so to say. The couple that wrote the play, they, as I say, had written for Broadway before. So they decided, and they're Canadian, so they decided that this is a story that they could make into a play, right? So they interviewed people for over a year. And all of those stories, they tried to figure out how they were going to get all of them to touch a little bit of each one. And they did a terrific job. And if and when you see the play, there are 12 characters, and each one plays at least 2 to 3 parts. And the only thing that changes is maybe a jacket or a hat or a vest, you know, and they go into the next character. And then they come back to it, you know. So it is really, really well done. And they touch just a little bit of everything. And the language barrier is featured in one of the songs, actually. Yeah. So, yep.
Yes.
I was blessed at about the age of 7 to spend summer on an island in Lake Ontario. And it was only connected to the mainland by a ferry once a day. How about, you said Newfoundland is an island, and I just looked it up, it definitely is. How was it connected to the rest of Labrador?
That was one of the things that some of the passengers said, well, you know, it's an island, but there's got to be ferries, you know, and that's featured in the play also. But it was one of those things that it would be like a 4-hour drive to get to where the ferry was. And then the ferry has to go across over to Nova Scotia or Labrador, and then you have to still take another ferry to get to another part. There's 3 ferries involved somehow. And then there's a bus, if it happens to be the right time. And then you might get to some place where you could rent a car if there was one available. Yeah, so it would be about a 2.5-day trip to get from where we were to be able to get to Canada proper, that you would maybe get to some place you could get across, but probably couldn't get across because it would be closed. Yeah.
Was Canada itself shut down, or were they functioning?
Oh no, they were great. They were still, we wouldn't have been able to land without them. So yeah, they were very open and still delivering to the Walmart somehow. I'm not sure. Because the shelves would just get cleared and suddenly the next morning there'd be stuff back on them again. I'm not sure where they found it, or that warehouse was really full to start with. And they may have even, actually, that's a good idea. They may have been overloading already for winter because it was September, so they may have had their warehouses really pretty well stacked and ready for winter, much like that pantry that we were emptying out at the Salvation Army. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Got one over there.
Sorry.
So can we talk a little bit about the show?
Mhm.
Naturally, that's of interest.
Yeah.
You know, having seen the show, I know how it resonated with me,
Mhm.
but obviously it would strike you in a way that where your insight and specific knowledge would make you read things in perhaps a different way.
Yeah.
What are the big takeaways for you? Without necessarily doing spoilers, how does it hit you? What's the biggest theme that you come away with after seeing the show?
Oh gosh. Well, just overall, of course, is just the fact that the humanity that they offered, and that's always ever present. It should be for everybody, everywhere. You know, if there's a day that goes by that you don't smile at someone, you should. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, hello. Hi, Kat.
Judy, since you've seen the show 15 times, do you have a favorite number from Come From Away?
Well, let's see. Between Me and the Sky, probably, was written explicitly for Beverly Bass, or because of Beverly Bass. The play she is very much sort of the narrator, her character, and she is a captain. She was a captain for American Airlines, the first woman captain for American Airlines. And there's a song that relates to her about Between Her and the Sky, because prior to 9/11, it was entirely different, and after 9/11, it was entirely different. So, yeah, probably Between Me and the Sky. Yeah. So.
Yes.
Ever since you said you were on a plane for 19 hours with 5 children, I've had a
Well, no, it was actually 25 hours. We were on the tarmac for 19. Oh, the children were great. The children were great. As I say, I think part of it was just maybe sort of their upbringing to know that they were going to be on a mercy ship for a year, you know, and the ages range probably from, I'm going to say the little boy, or not little boy, but he was probably 14 was the oldest, and went down to, the little one was probably, she was probably 5. So, but they were great. Hardly knew they were there, and some of the people, some of the kids from Gambo, the hall, the community hall, they would play. They would come and play with those 5 kids would, met other kids, and, they would come and play and things. So, yeah, but it was, and the little one, the little 18-month-old, we didn't even know she was there. As we were getting off the plane, the 777 has different compartments, and you have this wall, that row basically sort of has its own foot area, and she had been in that little area the whole time. And it was like, she come around the little corner, I said, Colin, I haven't seen that child. Where did she come from? And her mother just smiled. It was like, it was amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And we actually, and when, talking with people that haven't been in the area, when we got to the church and they put us in line for the phones, we walked around the corner and Colin said, oh, look, there's Les. And I said, Les who? And he said, it's Les McTaggart. It's like, okay. I haven't seen him for probably, 18 years. He worked in Formula One, and at that point in time, he was working with the Indy Racing League. So he was on his way to Dallas, just like I was, or would be, So they were up, he and his wife were up in business class. And that was another little hint that came along. When the pilots received the message that they were going to be diverted, the flight attendants started gathering up, of course in business class, they had real glass and real silverware those days. They started gathering all those things up and putting the alcohol away. So all of that was cleared. So when we actually talked to Les and Helen, they said they knew something was going on. That's when they knew something was going on. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
How long was it before you could communicate with your family that you were on the ground in Gambo?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was late Wednesday. Yeah, but I had someone that was wise enough, and I had left information about our flight number. She checked the flight number, and United actually on their website told her our plane was on the ground there. So she knew. Yeah, so we had one family member that had figured it out, so then she talked to everybody. So when we did actually were able to reach them, they said, yeah, we know. It's like, okay. But England, all of Colin's family in England, they had no idea. So Colin, that was the first people he called, was to call home and be able to let them know that, yep, we were okay. We just, didn't know how long we were going to be here, but we're here. So, yeah. So.
Can you talk about the significance of the title, Come From Away?
Oh, the Come From
The title.
the title.
The significance of the title, Come From Away.
In Newfie speak, that would be Come From Away. In other words, you're not from here. Yeah. Or, as to make it plural, come from a ways. It's all of us were come from a ways. Yeah. And that's another song, actually. Yeah. Yeah. But to the plain people, we were the plain people, But also to the people on the island, that was an easy way to identify us. If it was like they came around the corner and didn't know who that was, oh, that's one of the plain people, okay. So, yeah.
Were you able to go through the town much? Like, I guess you went to Walmart and things like that. I was under the impression a lot of people were absorbing people into their homes.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. That's why I say we were probably, there was probably about 150 of us actually at the Salvation Army, and the others they had been invited to people's homes. And again, the 3 sets of newlyweds, and other people too. We had one lady that had gone through hip surgery, and there wasn't any way she was going to be able to sleep on one of those cots or the church pew. So there had been one of the volunteers volunteered their home, and they opened up their home, and that's part of the play also, which, yeah, you're really enjoying.
question.
Okay.
Your story has touched, obviously, so many people in this room. How does it feel sitting up here being able to share that story with everyone today?
I told someone earlier that I said if they've known me for the last 22 years, they've already heard part of it anyway. Because it's just part of me now.
Yeah.
You know, because it was not something you would ever think in your lifetime that you would go through. And the goodness of the Newfoundland people, just people need to know, you know. And anyone can be that kind. It's just a matter of thinking that's the way you want to be. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank you again for being here today with us. So can we give a round of applause to Judy, please? It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to give a huge thank you to Purdue Convos again for hosting this event today. It was such an honor to be up here and share Judy's story with you all, and I've had the honor of getting to know you the past couple of weeks. So again, come from away. We'll be here at Purdue on April 3rd. You can buy tickets online through Purdue Convos. Oh, Judy wants to know, how many people have seen the musical with Judy? That's awesome. That's amazing. And hopefully many more come April. So again, the show will be April 3rd here at Purdue in the Elliott Hall School of Music. April 3rd's the date. You can get your tickets online through Purdue Combos or at the box office at the Stewart Center. So thank you all again for being here today. And Judy will stick around for a little bit, so if you have any more questions or want to meet her personally. So thank you all again. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Thank you.